It is cold. In Hong Kong, it's
Yeah,
quite chilly.
I assume so.
It's chilly.
It, it's cold in Taiwan as well, to be fair.
Oh, is it? Oh, okay. So it must be like a cold front then.
Yeah.
It must be a cold, cold front.
I don't, no such thing anymore, I feel like.
What do we? March? Yeah. Some sort of cold front, I guess. I guess it's supposed to be spring, so it's not totally cold.
Yeah,
Or it's not totally
exactly.
warm either. Yeah.
How's my
How's
connection? Is
everything?
it okay?
It's not so okay, but it's fine. It'll just record on your end and then send it over
Oh, really?
later on. Yeah. So what it does is the good thing about this recording software is like it just records on your end, right? And then records on my end. And then
Oh,
oh, did you just turn off the camera?
so
So how do you account for like lag? I didn't turn off the camera.
hold on.
Oh, right. Okay.
Let me go find a
Different spot in this play.
Okay. And then the lag, yeah, that's kind of where the sophistication of software kind of comes up. Even though there's a bit
All
of
right.
lag, they will
Hold on.
they'll compute it.
Is this better? Oh, what a fail.
What happened?
Yo, is this
Hey,
better?
oh, you're back.
Yes.
Voice of
I was
God.
like, God, I need to find a new place to sit. So
Yeah,
anyway, yes, the voice of
yeah.
God is here.
The voice of God is here. No, so what the clever thing is like it just records locally on your end and
Ah,
records locally on my end.
got it.
Um, and
So you can like edit out, pause, stuff like that from like one side and the other type of thing.
yeah, and then but then it syncs it all together. So then the font, even
Hmm.
though like the quality we have on the call might be bad or like whatever, just rougher, it records locally on your
Right.
ends, and then it sends it up and uploads
Yeah,
it. So the copy will always be good.
Ah,
Yeah,
got
yeah.
it. No, cool. Nice. Very
So
nice.
yeah, let's go through the podcast and your podcast, and then yeah, I'm just gonna put
sure.
some cover art. Yeah, I was like reverse course, and I was like, I couldn't think. I tried that movie, the one where like, is it Gwyneth Paltrow? Yeah, in London, and it just does this thing, goes back in time.
Hmm.
Have you seen? You were in that movie?
No,
Oh
I
god,
don't.
I was
Well,
like,
you could always do the
I was like, oh.
the flight attendant. I mean, the idea is more the flight attendant thing, right? Where I don't know, now it's a video, but it used to be like the person who stands at the front, right? And they're
Yeah, yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah, the
the
nearest.
nearest exit can be behind you. And so it could be like
Could be
a
that.
person, a flight attendant, and with the rows of seats, right? I don't know.
Could be the flight attendant just kind of like doing this thing, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, let me do that. Let me try that. And then obviously you be the pretty. So send me
Yes,
once you're
exactly.
done. Send me a picture. Oh, I'll try that one. That should be able to get like something there. And then
Sure.
yeah,
Fair enough.
reverse
Fair
course. Yeah,
enough.
the reverse course. I was like, I can't think of anything. I was thinking of like running around in circles or like
Mm,
zigzags, and I was just like,
right.
anyway. So yeah. But the flight attendant is good. Yeah, let me do that. That's
Mm,
good. A couple things. So couple things on the podcast. What kind of made you think about it? Was it the Belangi? I mean, it was Belangi. It was David Goliath, STC, Coinbase, and I guess are you kind of back? Yeah, it was kind of like, are you anti crypto? Maybe not anti, but it was kind of like you're like hedging. So I wasn't quite sure.
Well, I mean, I guess that's the point, right? Which is like, yeah, it's not hedging.
But
It's it's the ability to, again, change course, right? As in, there's a lot of people in the industry, right, that are very wedded or fixated on, you know, I'll call it principles, right?
mm,
And I think that, when you're so wedded, you get, I'll call it tunnel syndrome, and you can't really sort of, think things through or
mm,
think about it all the way through. And therefore, you're always sort of thinking in, I'll call it small increments
mm,
versus, I'll call it a bit more in advance, right? And so that's why I went through sort of that mental thought exercise of like, what if the dollar did go to shit?
mm,
And what if it is Bitcoin? Like, how does that
mm,
actually work? I mean,
mm.
I still don't even understand how we say that Bitcoin is like the future when we still peg it to the dollar
Sure.
as a
Right.
price reference, right? So
Right.
I'm like, we sit here and we talk about how, Bitcoin is the future and, it's going to replace money and whatever, but we're always talking about how much is a Bitcoin worth and
Mm,
how much is it worth in what context, in the context of the US dollar. So I
mm,
just sit there and I go, well, okay, well, let's say the US dollar is gone. Like, what is
mm,
Bitcoin then? And
mm,
how does that become a medium of exchange?
mm,
How do we price things? On what
mm,
basis? What references? So I think it's just like, okay, well, yeah, let's just do the thought exercise, right? It's like,
mm, mm,
and I think people just sit there and they talk about how, yeah, this is Bitcoin's moment and it's all this and that. But at the end of the day, it's like, okay, how?
mm,
Um, so that's where you kind of go like, okay, well, if you were to, it's not too late to sort of rethink, right? Like, is that really the way it's gonna
mm,
go? Like,
mm,
or is there an actual way, right? And should we actually think that through? Because ultimately,
mm,
like, if you don't have a plan for how it's gonna happen,
mm,
it's never gonna happen, put it that way.
mm, mm.
So I think that was really the sort of the
Okay.
the crypto piece, right? And then obviously
Right.
there's Coinbase, and it's like the same thing, right? It's like, you want them to win, but I don't know. It feels like you got to pick your spots. Right now just
Mm,
does not seem to be the time, right? And now there's that thing with Binance that just came out with
yes.
CFTC, right?
That's
And
right.
it's like, dude, at the end of the day, like the government, the regulators, they hold all the cards,
Mm,
and
mm,
you got to pick your moment, right? And the moment
mm,
is just not now to like really try and like fight fire with fire, because it's like,
mm,
well, yeah, I
mm,
mean, you guys are everyone's like touting like DeFi is the future, and it's like
mm,
DeFi still got all kinds of issues,
mm,
and in the context of a banking crisis, right?
mm,
I just don't see how you can expect, I'll call the foundational money institutions to actually
mm,
even give a shit, put it that way,
mm,
about what you
mm,
have to say or what you think, because they got
mm,
bigger things to think about. You know what I mean? So it's like, this is
mm,
just like the worst time for
mm,
you guys to try and fight. And look, this is why I've said it many times, but Gensler is, I mean, say what you will about the guy, but he's definitely in my mind like mastermind. He is masterminding all of this right now. He is like picking his time at the right times, I would say,
mm,
where I think like he minimum output for
mm,
the stuff that he's trying to put out into the world.
mm.
So that'd be my take.
I see. When you were kind of going on that kind of, not a rant. That sounds negative, but you were going down that thing. It did make me think. To your reference, you reference, I think, Brian Armstrong's tweet, right? And like,
Mm,
oh, we did this, we did that, and but it really, at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter what they did, right? Like, or what they
yeah,
did, like, yeah, what they did, right? Like, or we engage in a dialogue, or that's maybe trying to persuade the retail or consumers, but at the end of the day, that's what the SEC wants.
Yeah, it's like neither here nor there.
Yeah.
And, if you think about like how much precedence they have built up in the last like year, right? Like
Mm,
they've sued everybody based on
mm,
like existing regulation.
mm,
You know what I
mm,
mean?
mm,
And people have settled or people are still fighting. But at the end of the day, like there's not like new precedents being created, right?
mm,
There's not like
mm,
new things that are coming out of this. So in reality, like
mm.
the SEC has probably done an extremely good job of like creating frameworks to
Right.
box,
Right.
crypto into things, right?
It actually is probably isn't kind of even worse, right, on Brian Armstrong's side in the sense like just don't tweet anything out, right? You're not convincing. You may convince the users that you're fighting the good fight, but at the end of the day, it's not really helping your case against the SEC. That's really who you shouldn't fight. But at the end of the day, like if you do fight, then it looks even worse on for you against them. Might make you look good with users, but you're
Yeah,
not
I
furthering
mean,
that fight
yeah, and it's like,
or that conversation.
I think they're definitely better than like, the good
Mm,
folks at like, Elon Musk, right? Who
sure.
like he has said so much shit that like if you
Right.
go through his records, you could always find something, right? That would be
Yes.
considered market
That's right.
manipulation or
That's
what
right.
have
You
you.
were kind of referenced that as well. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so
And
I
that's
think
clearly
they've done
that's
like a
true.
better
And
job.
that's and that's clearly true. Like, I think Brian Armstrong's like statements were at least were like maybe a lawyer didn't go through it. Maybe they did, but at least it wasn't
Yeah.
like screw you. It was like oh we did engage, we did talk, right? We've spent more on legal fees than anybody else. Like it wasn't
Yeah.
egregious, but yes, it's
And there's
neither
no
here
like
nor there.
comments in there that could like get you in trouble, right?
Right.
I mean, obviously, some people could argue, right? It could always be argued, right, that they're also engaging in some type of market manipulation as well, from the perspective of their public listed company. So you do have to be
Right.
careful around like what you
Right.
disclose, how you
Right.
disclose. So,
Yes. True. True.
um, but I think they've generally been pretty above
Right.
board, if I'm being honest. But
Right.
Twitter is just like it's an open forum, right? It's a forum for debate, blah blah. But like when you're like about to get into it from like a litigation perspective, it's like I don't know if that's like the best place you want to like just start going at
Right.
it.
Right. Right. Yeah.
My take.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. I mean, generally, I saw what happened. So we kind of predicted there was something. Me and Richard, some guy from SUV 3DAO, he came on as a guest before. Some guy. That's the wrong way to kind of talk about it. He was a guest before, and so we talked that there was probably going to be one other event
Mm,
over the weekend, and this is not over the weekend, but it is shortly after. And I think Justin was charged. Yeah, last week it was Justin's charge. Lindsay Lohan, I think, other 8 other celebrities,
mm.
um, and then yes, CZ. Would you? So to some degree, I think that's a good thing, right? But the markets really didn't respond. I mean, Bitcoin went down for $1,000. It's still fine, right? So is it non-news?
Well, I mean, the Lindsay Lohan stuff probably on news, right? As in, like, yeah, I
She'll pay a
mean,
fine.
sorry, yeah, I mean, it's not non-news. It's definitely news from the perspective of like, yeah, if you're ever going to try to do influencer marketing, right, for
Hmm.
your platform or whatever, right, I think
Right.
people are going to think twice, right? So I
Right.
think relying on, I'll call it celebrity type endorsements to like further your cause is probably going to be, not gonna necessarily, if that's
Hmm.
like your game plan for sales and marketing. Yeah,
Hmm.
probably that will impact you. I think in terms of the CZ stuff, I
Right.
mean, hard to say, right? I mean, technically, it shouldn't impact Bitcoin, technically, right? Because they're not really, I mean, they're not really related to each other at all, other than like,
Hmm.
obviously Binance is named after Bitcoin and it's a huge exchange, right, from a liquidity perspective. So that will obviously, I think, create some, or should create some impact, right? But
Hmm.
I don't know, maybe there's a perspective that, I don't know, maybe people are not factoring in liquidity
Hmm.
into sort of their thinking around price risk.
Hmm.
But I have to assume if it does get shut down, liquidity is going to be an issue.
Hmm.
So the price of these tokens are going to be extremely volatile, right? So I'd say, yeah, I mean, look, there's something to be thought about there in terms of, is the price the price? And how stable is that price going to be going forward, right? Because without
Hmm.
liquidity, you
Right.
got a problem.
Right.
And if you got both Binance and Coinbase, sort of in this weird situation as an exchange. Now, with the future of the exchange, who knows, right? So there's a little bit of like lack of clarity.
Mm,
So, you know, the centralized exchanges are on a little bit of a funk
mm,
in terms of, you know, whether or not they're going to be a going concern. So I think from a price perspective, it's definitely going to be liquidity
mm.
versus, I think, I'll call it, I don't know, anything related to the specific events at hand. But I think all tokens should move actually, based on these events, right? Because I do think liquidity is probably going to be something to think through. If these sort of events turn into, I'd say like a catastrophic situation, right? So
Mm.
that's probably the risk, I think. But you know, look, at the end of the day, like, yeah, if they get shut down, who knows?
Right.
It could be broader, right? It could just be like the future of crypto's gone. I mean, it's like it's hard to say, but I think like the immediate thing that I see is definitely going to be liquidity driven,
Mm.
on top of and liquidity driven by, you know, yeah, whether or not there's going to be these exchanges around, and therefore, you know, how do people think about the world, and do
Oh,
people
that's
sort of
yours.
run for the doors and that kind of thing? Oh yeah, that's mine. Yeah,
I was like, is my kids back? All right.
no,
So
no.
I'm looking at like mid cap S&P cryptocurrency BDM Bitcoin index one day negative 3.14%, negative 5% for BDM X large cap, X mega cap. It's about 5% down. It's not that bad.
Hmm.
DeFi index negative 5% down. It's not huge. Not huge.
What's a DeFi index?
DeFi index is based. I think it's like the top 20 projects in DeFi. So all the coins in
Uh,
the top 20. Uniswap. I forgot who else. Here we go. Methodology. Yeah, those. That would be the composition.
got it, got it.
Yeah. And this is S&P Dow Jones, so it's kind of relatively pretty
Hmm.
dependable.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, right. So I guess that is the kind of ongoing concern. Now, this is also impacts only the uh, does it only impact the U.S. side? Because I think it's naming him, right, and I think his CFO, but it also like makes accusations against the U.S. side only, right? But doesn't really matter.
Uh, I mean, I don't know. I guess it matters to a certain degree. I mean, let's put it, it depends, I guess. I don't know actually the composition of the customer base, but
It
I have to assume it's pretty
was.
large
It's
in
pretty
terms of
large.
US. Yeah.
So there on the is an indictment. It's the case filing had a graph actually, so
Mm,
it had insider chats, right?
yeah.
Which is pretty. Yeah, I was like, okay, this is pretty like thorough. There's an insider here, and then it had some stats. The U.S. customers are. I'll kind of send this document over to the YouTube as well. So U.S. accounts for about 16%
Mm.
as of 2000. Oh, there's no date. July 2019.
Oh, then it's definitely bigger now, I would assume, right?
Yeah,
Versus 2019. So I would imagine.
yeah,
Um, yeah, so I think it'd be huge.
yeah. July
Just given.
2019 was
Mm,
19%. August. Anyway, yes, it was increasing 16, 19%, about 20%, let's
mm,
just say.
mm, mm. Yeah, I think it's more, right? Because like, you know, the real takeoff happened like 2021. So I have to assume it's huge is my
Right.
best guess. But yeah, I mean, maybe just a sidebar. I mean, if you think about like how this is all happening, right? It's an inside job.
Yes.
Just like
Yes.
everybody else that's been
Right.
taken down, it's been kind of like an inside job. And this goes back to your conversation with I think Nitin, right, at State
Mm.
Street,
Mm.
and talking about DeFi, right? And it's like,
Mm.
yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, and this kind of touches on the whole Bitcoin thing as well that I sort of go through is like, you know, at the end of the day, it really takes an insider to like
Mm.
break the system.
Right.
So, you know, for Bitcoin to really sort of, you know, take its place in the world, I think it really is going to have to be driven by somebody on the inside of, I'll call it the old money world, right?
Mm.
Who understands like every facet of it that then could sort of, you know, bring Bitcoin to the fold, blah 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 blah. But yeah, I think like I guess you see it everywhere at the end of the day. But yeah, at the end of the day, like, you're gonna break something, especially something that is considered almost like a fortress.
Hmm.
It always comes from the inside. I mean, you could take it back to fucking, I don't know, whatever, Achilles and Troy and all that,
Hmm.
right? Trojan horse type thing. It had to
Hmm.
happen from the inside. So I do think that, yeah, if you sort of look at that in the context of everything else, and I'm just obviously cherry picking elements in history, right? But there are so many different times in which this does happen, and it's
Hmm.
always from the inside out, um, versus someone coming in from the outside trying to penetrate in.
Oh yeah, I'm looking at more articles. Bloomberg. I'm not an anarchist, but I should have learned Arabic. I probably should have learned Arabic earlier. So basically,
Uh,
he's 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 off to that part of the world.
oh God, who
Uh,
said that?
CZ.
Oh God. Oh
I mean,
goodness.
so one thing that people are saying, oh shoot, now like on ramps and off ramps on Binance. That's okay. So that's one part, which is there's liquidity, but Binance outside the US can still survive. So you can take 25% of the volume away. That's still 75% all across the world. It's okay. Take out the US, okay. Binance.com everywhere else, okay. That's still okay. And then people are saying kind of on ramp and off ramps. But I guess as long as there's somebody willing to do business with them, right? And they also do a lot of like peer to peer, I think. Yeah,
Yeah,
peer to
peer to
peer,
peer. I mean, there's always ways, put it that way,
right? Yeah,
right?
there's always ways. So that's
I
not.
guess it's a question of like legitimacy, I think. I don't think it's a question of like, can you do it? I think it's just like, whether or not it's ever going to be like a legitimate product or a legitimate sort of
Mm,
thing, right?
mm,
And ultimately, that's the
mm,
whole point of it, is that, like, if you really wanted to like be this thing, right, it has to be accepted as a legitimate, form of capital transfer, capital
yeah,
movement, blah blah
fair.
blah, right?
Yeah, fair. Yeah, I mean, this would give pause to like Visa working with them, right? Or Mastercard or that type of
Yeah,
thing.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Um, fair. I mean, this I think certainly was he a victim? Like victim, maybe that's the wrong way to say it. Like the last 2 years was definitely too frothy, and last year was
Mm,
was, was actually too egregious. I actually kind of made a tweet or made a statement into a group and said everyone that really kind of went balls deep the last 2 years made it out to be Bennett should be arrested or cut. Right, have their
right.
legs cut. I mean, because it was just like it was too egregious, and I think no one maybe it's too it's easy to be said, but whether anyone can do anything about it, that's a different thing.
Mm,
But it didn't put the industry in a sustainable kind of level,
mm,
right?
mm.
Certainly grew too fast. No one said anything. Yeah, no, there was no kind of there. Maybe there were some people that tried to say something, but everyone was just having too much of a good time, and
Yeah, I
that's
mean,
what
if you even
happens.
if you
Unregulated
yeah,
markets,
oh for sure, right? And
right?
even if you look at like the claims that are being brought against Binance and CZ, right, it's pretty bad stuff.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like it's like the worst thing that you could ever expect in terms of being a trusted,
Yes.
um, you know, exchange, right? Where people can sort of go and, be treated fairly and can execute trades and blah blah, right? It's all kinds of front running type of activity, all kinds of anti-money laundering breaches. I mean, it is just bad, right? So I mean, I have to imagine,
Hmm.
yes, obviously you could look at this as like a US thing in isolation.
Hmm.
But I mean, dude, once the other, I'll call it legitimate markets that recognize Binance, giving them licenses, I have to imagine
Yeah,
they are
that's
also
fair.
going to start looking themselves, right? So
Of course. Of course.
you know,
Right.
not to use a term that's not necessarily applicable, but like this could be a bank run on Binance, right? Or a license run or whatever you want to call it, where people are like, dude, can't have like you funding terrorists and you like doing anti-money laundering and manipulation and trying to get around KYC stuff, blah blah blah, right? It's just so I could see this being like not it's just not US in isolation. It's going to
Sure.
impact them more broadly is my sense.
I think a lot of people, yeah, having run a fund right before, and I've thankfully stepped away from it. But having run it before in this space, I think everybody kind of knew,
Mm,
but it was just everyone's having, or people just didn't ask the right questions. And I think we talked about this once. Is that if there are no like people are saying, well, DeFi is the way, everything's transparent. You know, this is crypto. That's why crypto is great because everything's transparent. But if no one has any incentive to be the one looking over people's shoulders and saying they should be doing this, it's not going to get. It's not going to be an issue that's addressed, right? And so, um, yeah, people were just making too much money, and no one had any incentive to say stop, right? And then now these regulators do have an incentive, right? And so I guess it begs the question, like, yeah, there should be regulators. I mean, this should be regulated. It should
I mean,
always
it's
have
all
been.
about fair play, right? Put it that way. And I think that, if there is no one to like watch you, then, human nature takes over, right?
Yeah,
And you're a capitalist at the end there, right? You're
yeah,
greedy. Sorry,
yeah,
capitalist isn't the right word. You're just greedy as fuck.
yeah.
And so if that's how, then that's how people are, right? If they see like an easy pot of money, they're going to take it.
That's
So
right. Yep,
I don't
that's right.
blame the industry for what happened, but I think everyone has to recognize what you just said, right? Which is maybe it needs to be regulated.
And I think there was another thing, which is like CZ's response was like four, right? That this is FUD. And then someone
Right.
did kind of respond, or a few people responded, and just say, well, it is FUD to a certain degree, right? So to your early first point, which is philosophical, like, yes, it is philosophically FUD, but at the end of the day, this also, it's facts. It is FUD if you're on the receiving end, but they're also facts at the end of the day, and you really or anybody needs to look at these facts and FUD in general, right? And just take a look a hard look at oneself, right, and not just kind of claim it as FUD. Oh, there you go. Hello. Ben, I hear you. Yeah, I hear you.
You hear me?
Okay, you can
Yeah,
hear me.
but yeah, I don't know. I've longed disliked the term FUD because you can just throw
Let's just,
everything in
yeah.
there.
Yeah. Oh, listen, the last guys who have said it was FUD, right? Were what? Adani got crushed, right? And maybe that comes, I mean, it's still around, obviously, but once you say it's FUD, people go like, what the fuck? Like, that's all you can say, right? You got to like really respond to this stuff, or else people
Yeah,
go
right.
complete loss of confidence.
Yeah,
You got Jack, right? And then the whole block thing. He kind of came out and said this is ridiculous, and he's going to sue them. That again is just like, yeah, I get it, but you kind of need to like come out with like a
yeah,
full on
something.
rebuttal to
That's
like the
right.
core, right?
Right,
Or it's like, yeah, then people are just like, okay, you're definitely hiding something, right?
right. And well,
And in this environment of shoot first.
did you see CC's response?
No, but I imagine it is along the lines of what you just said, where he's just like, this is, whatever, right? Disappointed. We're
Yeah,
going to continue to work with the regulators,
there
whatever
was
FUD, right?
right.
Yeah,
There were some kind of points where, but actually, he addressed things, but those things actually had nothing to do with.
right.
So it's like 20% maybe had to do with the report, to the case kind of filed against him. 80% was just like things like we've made effort, right? We've done this, we've done that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But yeah,
And
so
and I always tend to find that he deflects, right? I mean, I don't know the guy personally, obviously, but like every time I see like any kind of messages or things he puts out, he always like deflects in a way that doesn't necessarily take the issue head on. So he'll be like, "Oh yeah, like all this country is saying I'm a bad guy, but what about these 10 other countries who say I'm a good guy?"
right,
And he tried to like mask it with like this and that, and like it's convincing, but at the same time, it's not answering the question. So you're
yeah.
like, okay, well, it's a dodgy way. He's a good dodger, put it that way.
But you can't in the Johnny Cash song, you can't run. Sooner or later, God's gonna cut you down. Sooner or later, God's gonna cut you down.
There you go.
I tweeted that and like the bad boys when Do Kwon got arrested.
He really liked that he got arrested.
I like it when I remember that bounty show, that bounty hunter show in the U.S.
Yes.
Mad Dog or something. Dog.
Yeah, yeah,
You
yeah,
know what
yeah.
I'm talking about?
I do know what you're talking about.
I
Or
love that. And then the
there's the one
cops
where
as
it's
well.
like,
And cops.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Or there's the pedophile setup one, right? Where it's like pretends to be like a
Oh yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah, that one. Yeah,
the
to catch
cops
it.
like pretend, yeah,
Yeah, to
catch
catch
a
a
predator, I
predator.
think.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's right.
They're
All
American,
shit
right?
like
It's
this.
like, yeah, get him, get him. Yeah, cops was
Exactly.
all about that, right? It was just like a camera following like this cop car, right? And they just kind of go around arresting people.
Well, I think that's more. They stopped doing that because they realized, police were actually, beating up the wrong people.
Jeez, yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
That's true. That's
like, all
true.
right, we gotta cancel the show.
That's that's how many seasons of that was around?
I think there was a lot of seasons.
Cops
That's a very popular
show.
show.
I can't actually. Once I tweeted that, it's like only like no one like liked it. I was like, okay, I can't believe no one's seen that show. I'm just like so damn old. No, there were like 35 seasons.
Yeah, it was a really popular show, and
30.
then I think it just like it's probably the reason why police brutality became like a
I know,
thing, right? Because
right?
like they needed
Yeah,
that. They're like, we got to keep it to 36 seasons. We got to keep going, like
yeah,
make it more ridiculous.
yeah.
What else can we do?
No,
So
but actually, no. Maybe the fact that there was cops actually made brutality come down because
that's
they're
what
like, oh,
no,
okay, yeah, we got to keep the appearances. We can't
I
do stuff on camera, right? So
I don't
we
know.
never
I
know. We
think
could be on cops.
no, because
So.
it was like if you think about those movies, right, where people are like, "Oh yeah, taser me, bro." It's like I think that's like the cop. That's from like cops, right? Where they're like, if someone gets tasered, people are like, "Oh my god, the guy got tasered." So they want to see like crazier shit to
Oh, I
keep
see
them
what you
engaged.
mean. I see what
But
you mean. Well,
anyway,
I'm gonna go on YouTube now and just search out cops. Now that you got me all
fair enough.
excited about it. But yeah,
Fair enough.
more seriously, going back to Doe though. I mean, I thought about it as well, and I went to it and I was in a talk yesterday because this whole week is in Hong Kong. It's all about kind of crypto and all that type of jazz.
Mm-hmm.
And there was an ex-banker. We were on the show. He's like, clearly, Do Kwon was fraud and blah 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 blah. And I excused him for his defending the peg, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then as a founder, because this guy is actually the founder of OSL, but I was like, OSL is a very different beast than a startup.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you do have to market, right, pretty heavily. Sometimes you kind of have to. You don't have to, but sometimes you fake it till you make it type of thing, right? So I think simply that's kind of what he was doing. Now, unfortunately, just too many retail investors lost, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I get it. Once that happens, there's just nothing you can do. You have to serve, right? You have to serve your time. All across the world, it's all financial regulators always want consumer protection, and there's nothing he can do, right? And so,
Mm-hmm.
I guess my overall point is, some things he did right, some things he didn't do right, but unfortunately, he has to serve the time for crushing retail.
Yeah, I don't know. Let's see. I guess I mean I'm curious to see like what ultimately comes out of all this, right? Because anyone right now can make the case that he was a good guy or a bad guy, but if he actually does get a fair trial or a trial at all, I don't know. They might just take him to Korean jail and beat the shit out of him in the back room. I'm not sure, but assuming he does get a trial, I have to assume there'll be more interesting things that come out. But anyway,
It is Korea, right? He is getting. There was like an Interpol thing, and then
I think so. I think they'll
it's
extradite. Like
Do
he was caught like in
Kwon.
Montenegro, and
Yes,
he
Do
got caught,
Kwon
and maybe
arrest,
they'll
and then
send. I'm
where's
sure they'll send him back to Korea. Put it that way. I
a
don't know
South
where else
Korean
they'd send
court
him.
issued
Yeah,
a warrant for his.
yeah,
Who is wanted in South Korea and the United States on fraud and other charges. So
yeah,
I guess it's a matter of jurisdiction who actually gets him.
yeah. But
But in September, South
anyway,
Korean court issued an arrest warrant for Kwon. Has been charged with fraud and breaches of South Korea's capital markets law. Yeah.
anyway, I got to roll, man.
All right, cool. We'll talk later.
Cool.
Let me know when
Yeah.
you're free. We can talk through some of the
Okay.
other things as well. All right.
Cool. All right, man.
Cheers.
Chat
All
later.
right.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.